Audiobooks presents The Law of Attraction in the World of Thought. The mind of man, I believe, contains the greatest of all forces, and thought is one of the greatest manifestations of energy. I believe that the man who understands the use of the power of thought can make of himself practically whatever he wishes. I believe that not only is the body subject to the control of the mind, but that man can also change his environment, luck, or circumstances, by means of positive thought taking the place of negative. I know that the I can and I will attitude will carry one forward to success that seems miraculous to the man on the I can't plane. I believe that thoughts are things, and that the law of attraction in the world of thought will attract what one desires or fears. I believe in the gospel of work in action force. I believe in I do as well as I am. I know that the man who takes advantage of the power of the mind and who manifests that power in action will advance toward success with the same certainty and constancy as the arrow shot from the bow of an expert archer. I believe in the brotherhood of man. I believe in being kind. I believe in everyone minding their own business and allowing everyone else the same privilege. I believe that we have no right to condemn. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. I believe that he who hates is a murderer, that he who covets is a thief, that he who lusts is an adulterer, and that the essence of the crime is in the desire. Seeing this, looking into our own hearts, how can we condemn? I believe that evil is merely ignorance. I believe that to know all is to forgive all. I believe there is good in all men. Let us help them to manifest it. I believe in the absolute equality of man and woman, though at times I believe the odds are slightly in favor of the woman. I believe in the sanctity of sex, but I also believe that sex manifests on the spiritual and mental planes, as well as on the physical. And I believe that to the pure all things are pure. I believe that man is immortal, that the real self is spirit, that it uses the mind and body as its tools and manifests according to the aptitude of the tools. I believe that man is rapidly growing into a new plane of consciousness in which he will know himself as he is and will recognize the I am, the something within. I believe that there is an infinite power within and in all things. I believe that, although today we know but slightly the idea of that power, we are still constantly trying to grasp it more completely, seeking more close contact with it. Even now we have momentary flashes of existence, a momentary consciousness of unity with the Absolute. I believe that the greatest happiness consists in maintaining, toward the Absolute, the child's attitude of trust, who feels not the least doubt of his parents' love, without doubting their wisdom, places his little hand in theirs and says, "Guide me on." I believe that he who feels inclined toward the Absolute, with the same confidence of the baby who places his tired little head close to the mother's breast, will also be aware of the tender response to the action, as the baby is pictured close to the mother's heart. William Walker Atkinson. Chapter 1. Law. The universe is governed by one law, a very important law. Its manifestations are multiform, but considered from a fundamental point of view, it is clear that there is only one law. We know some of its manifestations, but we are ignorant about others. Nevertheless, every day we learn a little more about them. The veil is gradually being lifted. We speak intellectually of the law of gravitation, but we are unaware that this, too, is a wonderful manifestation of the law of attraction. We are familiar with that wonderful manifestation of the law that attracts and holds together the atoms of which matter is composed. We recognize the power of the law that attracts bodies to the earth and that keeps the planets in place. But we close our eyes to the powerful law that attracts to us what we desire or fear, that which creates or ruins our lives. When we realize that thought is a force, a manifestation of energy that has the magnetic power of attraction, we begin to understand the reason for many things we didn't know until then. No study compensates the student more for the time invested than the study of the operation of this powerful law of the thought world, the law of attraction. When we think, we transmit vibrations of a fine, ethereal substance that are as real as the vibrations that manifest light, heat, electricity, and magnetism. That these vibrations are not evident to our five senses does not mean that they do not exist. A powerful magnet will send out vibrations and exert a force sufficient to attract a 100-kilo piece of steel to itself, but we cannot see, taste, smell, hear, or feel that force. Similarly, thought vibrations cannot be ordinarily seen, tasted, smelled, heard, or felt. Although it is true that there are documented cases of people especially sensitive to psychic impressions who have perceived powerful thought waves, and many of us can testify that we have clearly felt the thought vibrations of other people, both in the presence of the emitter and at a distance. Telepathy and its associated phenomena are not foolishness. Light and heat are manifested through vibrations of a much lower intensity than those of thought, but the difference is only in the vibratory rate. The annals of science shed some light on this matter. Elisha Gray says in his book, The Miracles of Nature, "There is much speculation about the existence of sound waves that the human ear cannot capture, and light waves of color that the eye cannot perceive. The enormous, dark, and mute space between 40,000 and 400 trillion vibrations per second, and the infinity beyond the 700 trillion vibrations per second, where light ceases in the universe of motion, allows for all kinds of speculation." M. Williams states in his work titled, Short Chapters in Science. There is no gradation between the fastest undulations or tremors produced by our sensation of sound, and the slowest of them, which give way to our sensations of the most delicate warmth. There is an enormous gap between them, large enough to include another world of motion, occupying a space between our world of sound and our world of heat and light. And there is no good reason to suppose that matter is incapable of such an intermediate activity, to imagine that such an activity could not give way to sensations of another kind, as long as there are organs that collect and feel their movements. I quote these authorities only to offer ideas to reflect on, and not with the intention of demonstrating the existence of thought vibrations. This latter fact has been fully demonstrated to the satisfaction of numerous researchers in that field, and a little reflection will show you that it coincides with your own experiences. Often hear the well-known statement of mental science that thoughts are things, and we utter these words without consciously understanding what they really mean. If we fully understood the truth of that statement and the natural consequences of the truth that sustains it, we could understand many things that until now are obscure to us, and use the wonderful energy of the force of thought, just as we use any other energetic manifestation. As I have said, when we think, we set in motion vibrations of a very high level, just as real as the vibrations of light, heat, sound, and electricity. And when we understand the laws that govern the production and transmission of these vibrations, we can use them in our daily lives, just as we do with other more well-known forms of energy. That we cannot see, hear, weigh, or measure these vibrations does not prove that they do not exist. There are sound waves that no human ear can hear, although some of them are undoubtedly registered by the ear of some insects, and others are captured by very sensitive instruments invented by man. Nevertheless, there is an enormous gap between the sounds registered by the most sensitive instruments and the limit that the human mind, reasoning by analogy, considers as the line of separation between sound waves and other forms of vibrations. There are light waves that the human eye does not register, some of which can be collected by the most sensitive instruments, and others much more subtle that still cannot be detected due to the lack of adequate instruments. Although every year advances are made, and the unexplored territory is gradually decreasing, the invention of new instruments makes previously unknown vibrations appear. Nevertheless, these vibrations were just as real before the invention of the instrument as they were after. Suppose we lack instruments to register magnetism. One could feel justified in denying the existence of that powerful energy, since it could not be tasted, felt, smelled, heard, seen, weighed, or measured. However, the magnet continues to send out waves of a force sufficient to attract to itself pieces of metal weighing hundreds of kilos. Every form of vibration requires its own type of instrument to register it. Currently, the human brain seems to be the only instrument capable of registering thought waves, although occultists believe that scientists will soon invent devices sensitive enough to collect and register this type of impression. And from the information we have at the present moment, it seems that this invention will appear shortly. But those who have experimented in the field of practical telepathy do not require any more demonstrations than the results of their own experiments. We continuously send out thoughts of greater or lesser intensity, reaping their results. Our thought waves not only influence us and others, but they also have a power of attraction. They attract to us the thoughts of others, things, circumstances, people, and luck, in accordance with the character of the dominant thought in our minds. Those of love will attract to us the love of others, circumstances and the environment according to the thought, as well as people of similar thought. Those of anger, hatred, envy, malice, and jealousy will attract to us the foul breath of similar thoughts emanating from the minds of other people. Circumstances in which we will be forced to manifest those vile thoughts and to receive them from others. Individuals who will manifest a lack of harmony, and so on. An intense or long-held thought will make us the center of attraction for the corresponding thought waves of other people. In the world of thought, similar things attract each other, and we reap what we sow. In the world of thought, birds of a feather fly together. Curses return to roost, like birds, and they do so accompanied by friends who are similar to them. The human being, full of love, perceives love everywhere and attracts the love of others. The human being who harbors hatred in their heart receives all the hatred they can bear. The human being who thinks about fighting usually fights everything they can until they overcome it. And so it is with everyone. Each one receives what they ask for through the wireless telegraphy of the mind. He who wakes up in the morning feeling in a bad mood usually gets the whole family in the same mood before they finish breakfast. The troublesome woman usually faces throughout the day everything that can feed her troublesome propensity. This question of the attraction of thought is a serious matter. When one thinks enough about it, one realizes that a person creates their own circumstances, even though they blame others for it. I have known people who have understood this law and who maintain a calm and positive thought and are not affected in any way by the lack of harmony that may surround them. These people are like the vessel from which oil is poured into turbulent waters. They remain serene and calm while the storm rages around them. When one has understood the operation of the law, one is not at the mercy of the whimsical storms of thought. We have passed through the era of physical force to arrive at that of intellectual supremacy, and now we are entering a field that is almost unknown, that of psychic energy. This field has its own laws, and we must familiarize ourselves with them, or else they will overcome us, as happens to those who ignore the planes of effort. I will try to clarify the important principles that underlie this new field of energy that is opening before us. so that you can use this great energy and apply it for legitimate and worthy purposes, just as man today uses steam, electricity, and other forms of energy. Chapter 2: Thought Waves and Their Reproductive Process. A thought produces waves that spread over the great ocean of mind, just as ripples do when a stone is thrown into water. But there's a difference. The waves on the water move in all directions but on a single plane, while thought waves move in all directions from a common center, like the sun's rays. Just as we are surrounded by a great sea of air here on earth, we are also surrounded by a great sea of mind. Our thought waves move through this vast mental ether, spreading out in all directions, as I've said. They decrease in intensity depending on the distance traveled due to friction from contact with the great body of mind that surrounds us everywhere. These thought waves have other distinct qualities than waves on water. They have the capacity to reproduce themselves. In this sense, they are more like sound waves. Just as a note from a violin makes a very fine glass vibrate and sing, an intense thought also tends to awaken similar vibrations in minds tuned to receive it. Many of the erratic thoughts that come to us are nothing more than reflections of responsive vibrations to certain intense thoughts sent by another person. But unless our minds are tuned to receive it, the thought is not likely to affect us. If we maintain high and important thoughts, our minds acquire a certain tone that corresponds to the character of the thoughts we have been having. And once this tone is established, we will be in a position to pick up vibrations from other minds modulated to the same thought. Conversely, we only have to get used to maintaining thoughts of an opposite character, and we will soon reflect the tone of the thoughts that emanate from the minds of thousands of people who think similar things. We are largely what we have thought, and the balance is represented by the character of the suggestions and thoughts of others, which have reached us either directly through verbal suggestions or telepathically through those thought waves. But our general mental attitude determines the character of the thought waves received from others, as well as the thoughts that emanate from ourselves. We only receive those thoughts that are in harmony with the general mental attitude we maintain. Those that are not in harmony affect us very little, since they do not awaken any response in us. He who firmly believes in himself and maintains an intense and positive mental attitude of confidence and determination is not likely to be affected by the adverse and negative thoughts of discouragement and failure that may emanate from the minds of other people in whom these predominate. At the same time, these negative thoughts, if they reach someone whose mental attitude is tuned to a low key, will deepen their negative state and add fuel to the fire that consumes their energy. Or, if you prefer another analogy, they will serve to extinguish the fire of their energy and activity. We attract the thoughts of others of the same order. He who thinks of success will tune in with the minds of others who think similarly, and they will help him, and he will help them. He who allows his mind to constantly dwell on thoughts of failure approaches the minds of other failed people, and each of them will tend to sink the others deeper. He who thinks that everything is bad is able to see a lot of badness and will come into contact with others who will seem to prove his theory. And he who seeks the good in everything and in everyone is likely to attract the things and people that correspond to that way of thinking. We generally see what we look for. You can develop this idea more clearly if you think of radio sets, which receive vibrations only from the station that is tuned to the same wave, while other signals pass through the air very close by without affecting the receiving device. The same law can be applied to the operations of thought. We only receive what corresponds to our mental tuning. If we feel discouraged, we can be sure that we have fallen into a negative key, into a negative tone, and that we will not only be affected by our own thoughts, but we will also receive other equally depressing ones of a similar type, which are constantly emitted by the minds of other unfortunates who still have not learned of the existence of the law of attraction. And if we ever rise to the heights of enthusiasm and energy, we will soon feel the arrival of encouraging, daring, energetic, and positive thoughts sent by the men and women of the world. We can recognize this circumstance without much effort when we come into personal contact with people and feel their vibrations, depressing or stimulating as the case may be. When we are not in their presence, the same law also operates. Although with less intensity, the mind has many tones, from the highest positive note to the lowest negative note, with many other intermediate notes, varying in tone depending on their respective distance from the positive or negative end. When your mind operates in positive terms, you feel strong, animated, bright, content, happy, confident, and brave, and you can do your work well, carry out your intentions, and progress toward success. You emit intense, positive thoughts which affect other people, getting them to cooperate with you or follow your leadership, depending on their own mental tone. When you play on the negative end of the mental keyboard, you feel depressed, weak, passive, dazed, fearful, and cowardly. You find yourself unable to progress or succeed, and your effect on others is practically nil. You are dragged along by them instead of leading them, and more positive people treat you like a rag. In some individuals, the positive element seems to predominate, and in others, the negative tendency seems to be more evident. But, of course, the degrees of positivity and negativity vary enormously. B can be negative for A, while C considers it positive. When two people meet, there is usually a silent mental conflict in which their respective minds check their positivity quality and establish their relative position with each other. This process can be unconscious in many cases. Nevertheless, it is something that happens. The adjustment is usually automatic, but every so often the struggle is so fierce, the opponents fit together so well, that the issue breaks into the consciousness of both people. Sometimes the two parties are so similar in their degree of positivity that they fail to reach a mental agreement. They can't hit it off with each other and feel mutually repelled and separated, or they stay together in constant disputes and arguments. We are positive or negative for all those with whom we establish contact. We can be positive for our children, our employees, and dependents, but at the same time, we are negative for others, with respect to whom we occupy inferior positions, or whom we have allowed to impose themselves on us. Of course, something can happen, and we suddenly become more positive than the man or woman for whom we were negative until now. Cases of this type are quite frequent, and as the knowledge of these mental laws becomes more widespread, we will see more cases of people asserting themselves, using their newfound energy. But remember that you have the power to raise the tone of your mind to a positive key thanks to the power of will. And, of course, it is also true that you can let yourself fall into a low and negative tone due to laziness or a weak will. There are more people on the negative thought plane than on the positive one, and therefore more negative thought vibrations exist in our mental atmosphere. But fortunately for us, this is balanced by the fact that a positive thought is infinitely more powerful than a negative one. And if, thanks to the power of will, we rise to a higher mental tone, we can block the passage of depressing thoughts and accept the vibrations that correspond to our new mental attitude. This is one of the secrets of the affirmations and autosuggestions used by the various schools of mental science and other New Thought approaches. The affirmations themselves have no merit, but they have a twofold purpose. They tend to establish new mental attitudes in us and are great for the development of character, the science of self-transformation. They tend to raise the mental tone, so that we can benefit from the positive thought waves of others on the same thought plane. Whether we believe in them or not, we are always making affirmations. He who claims to be able to do something and affirms it with gusto develops in himself the qualities that facilitate its achievement. and at the same time places his mind in the right tone to receive the thought waves that could help him to achieve it. If, on the other hand, one says and feels that he is going to fail, he will only drown and stifle the thoughts from his own subconscious mentality, which has the purpose of helping him, tuning himself in with the thought of failure of the world. And I assure you that this is something that is very abundant right now. We must not allow ourselves to be affected by the adverse and negative thoughts of those around us. We must rise to the upper chambers of the mental abode and tune into a higher tone, above the vibrations of the lower thought planes. Then you will not only be immune to their negative vibrations, but you will also come into contact with the important body of intense positive thought from those who occupy the same plane of development as you. My goal will be to guide and train you on the proper use of thought and will so that you can use them well and be able to hit the positive note at any time you might consider necessary. Not that you have to hit the highest note on all occasions. The most convenient thing is to stay in a tone that is comfortable, without much effort, and have the means to be able to raise that tone when the occasion so requires. Through this knowledge, you will not be at the mercy of the old automatic action of the mind, but it will be under your control. The development of the will is very much like the development of a muscle. It is a matter of practice and gradual improvement. At first, it is normal for it to be tiring, but with each new attempt, one gains strength until this new strength becomes real and permanent. Many of us have become positive when in extraordinary or urgent situations. We are in the habit of mustering up strength when the occasion requires it. But through intelligent practice, the will be strengthened in such a way that your habitual state will be equivalent to your current mustering up strength, and then, when you feel it is necessary to apply reinforcement, you will be able to reach a position that you cannot even imagine now. Don't think I am advocating that you be in a permanent state of high tension. By no means. Besides not being desirable, and not only because it is tiring, but also because sometimes you will find it necessary to loosen the tension and become receptive in order to absorb impressions. It is necessary to be able to relax and assume a certain degree of receptivity, knowing that you are always in a position to recover and adopt a more assertive state as desired. The person who is always very assertive misses a lot of enjoyment and leisure. By being assertive, you express yourself. By being receptive, you accept impressions. By being assertive, you are a master. By being receptive, you become a student. It is not only good to be a good master, but it is also important to know how to be a good listener. Chapter 3. A few words on the mind. A person has only one mind, but it has many mental faculties, and each one is capable of functioning in two different directions of mental effort. There are no clear lines of separation that divide the various functions of a faculty, but they overlap like the colors of the spectrum. An active force of any mind faculty is the result of a direct impulse transmitted at the moment of effort. A passive effort of any mind faculty is the result of an active effort from the same mind. An active effort from another mind following a suggestion. The thought vibrations of another person's mind. Or thought impulses from an ancestor, transmitted by the laws of heredity, including impulses transmitted from generation to generation since the time of the original vibratory impulse, transmitted by the first cause whose impulses unfold and develop when the appropriate state of evolutionary development is reached. The active effort is a fresh newborn, a newcomer, while the passive effort is of less recent creation, and in fact is often the result of vibratory impulses transmitted in past eras. The active effort makes its own way, pushing aside the branches that block its path and the stones that stand in its way. The passive effort runs along the beaten paths. A thought impulse, or impulsive motion, caused in principle by an active effort or faculty, can become, through repetition or habit, something strictly automatic, gaining momentum from the impetus developed by a repeated active effort, which propels it forward in passive terms, until it is stopped by another active effort or changes direction for the same reason. On the other hand, thought impulses or impulses of motion that run in passive terms can be terminated or corrected by an active effort. The active function creates, changes, or destroys. The passive function continues the work initiated by the active function and obeys commands and suggestions. The active function produces the thought pattern, or pattern of motion, to which it imparts its vibrations, which then propel it in passive terms. The active function also has the power to emit vibrations that neutralize the impulse of the thought pattern, or pattern of motion. It can also launch a new thought pattern, or pattern of motion with more intense vibrations, that overcomes and absorbs the first thought or motion, replacing it with a new one. Once they begin their missions, all thought impulses or impulses of motion continue to vibrate in passive terms until they are corrected or terminated by subsequent impulses transmitted by the active function or another controlling power. The continuity of the original impulse gives it impetus and strength, making it difficult to correct or end. This explains what is called the force of habit or custom. I believe that those who have struggled to overcome a habit they acquired with ease will understand this better. The law can be applied to both good and bad habits. The inherent moral is obvious. Sometimes, several of the mind's faculties combine to produce a single manifestation. A task, to be carried out, may require the combined exercise of various faculties, some of which may manifest in active effort and others through passive effort. The emergence of new circumstances and new problems requires the exercise of active effort, while a familiar problem or task can be handled with ease through passive effort without the help of its more dynamic sibling. In nature, there is an instinctive tendency in living organisms to perform certain actions, the tendency of an organized body to seek what satisfies its longings. This tendency is sometimes called appetence. It is actually a passive mental impulse, which has its origin in the impetus imparted by the first cause and transmitted throughout evolutionary development, accumulating strength and energy as it progresses. The impulse of the first cause is reinforced by the powerful upward attraction exerted by the Absolute. This tendency is very easy to see in the plant kingdom, from the lesser exhibitions in the lowest types to the greater ones in the highest types. It is what is often called the life force in plants. However, it is a manifestation of rudimentary intellection, which functions in accordance with passive effort. In some of the highest forms of plant life, a slight coloration of independent vital action appears, a faint indication of volition. The authors of works on plant life have already written remarkable examples of this phenomenon. Without a doubt, it is an exhibition of a rudimentary active intellection. In the lower animal kingdom, a very high degree of passive mental effort can be found, and, varying in degree depending on the various families and species, a considerable amount of active intellection is also apparent. There is no doubt that the lower animal possesses reason only to a lesser degree than the human being, and, in fact, the demonstration of volitional intellection exhibited by an intelligent animal is often as high as that demonstrated by lower types of human beings or by a small child. Just as a child, before being born, shows in its body the stages of the physical evolution of the human being, it also manifests before and after birth and until maturity, the stages of the mental evolution of the human being. The human being, the highest form of life produced so far, at least on this planet, demonstrates having the highest form of passive intellection and a much higher development of active intellection than can be appreciated in lower animals. And yet the degrees of that power vary widely among the different human races. The different degrees of active intellection are evident among men of the same race. These degrees do not in any way depend on the amount of culture, social position, or educational advantages that the individual possesses. Mental culture and mental development are two very different things. We only have to look around us to become aware of the different stages of the development of active intellection in the human being. The reasoning of many human beings is little more than passive intellection, which demonstrates few qualities of volitional thought. They prefer to let other human beings think for them. Active intellection tires them, and they find the passive mental process, which is instinctive and automatic, much easier. Their minds operate following the patterns of least resistance. They are little more than human sheep. Among lower animals and lower types of human beings, active intellection is mainly confined to the grosser faculties, to the most material plane. In them, the higher mental faculties function following the instinctive and automatic patterns of the passive function. With the progress of the lower forms of life on the evolutionary scale, they developed new faculties that were latent in them. These faculties always manifested in the form of rudimentary passive functioning, and then developed higher passive forms until the active functions came into action. The evolutionary process continues, with an invariable tendency toward the development of a high active intellection. This evolutionary progress is caused by the vibratory impulse imparted by the first cause, helped by the upward attraction of the Absolute. The law of evolution continues its development, and the human being begins to develop new powers of the mind that, of course, first manifest in the field of passive effort. Some people have developed these new faculties to a considerable degree, and it is possible that it will not be long before the human being is able to exercise them following the principles of their active functions. In fact, this power has already been realized by a few. That is the secret of the Eastern occultists and some of their Western brethren. The docility of the mind in the face of the will can be increased through properly directed practice. What we call the strengthening of the will is actually training the mind to recognize and absorb the inner power. The will is strong enough. It does not need to be strengthened, but the mind must be trained to receive and act according to the will's suggestions. The will is the external manifestation of the I Am. The flow of the will runs with all its power along the spiritual wiring. But you must learn how to lift the trolley to touch that wiring before the mental trolley bus can be put into operation. This is a different idea from the one generally received from writers who speak of willpower. But it is correct, as you can prove to yourself if you perform the appropriate experiments in the appropriate way. The attraction of the Absolute propels the human being upward, and the vibratory force of the primary impulse has not yet been exhausted. The time for evolutionary development has arrived in which the human being can help himself. He who understands the law can perform wonders thanks to the development of the mind's powers, while he who turns his back on the truth will suffer because of his lack of knowledge of the law. He who understands the laws of his mental being develops his latent powers and uses them with intelligence. He who does not despise his passive mental functions, but also uses them, burdens them with the tasks for which they are best adapted, and can obtain wonderful results from their work, as long as he has mastered and trained them to launch themselves toward the higher self. When they fail to perform their task in an adequate way, that human being regulates them, and his knowledge prevents him from foolishly interfering with them, avoiding all harm. He develops the faculties and powers latent within him and learns how to manifest them according to both active and passive intellection. He knows that the authentic human being within is the Lord of whom both the active and passive functions are only tools. He has banished fear from himself and enjoys freedom. He has found himself, He has realized the secret of the I Am. Chapter 4. Building the Mind. A person can build their mind and make it whatever they want it to be. In fact, we are always building the mind, both consciously and unconsciously. Most of us do it unconsciously, but those who can see a little beneath the surface of things take charge of the matter and become conscious creators of their own mentality. They are no longer subject to the suggestions and influences of others, for now they are their own masters. They affirm the I, and they impose obedience on the subordinate mental faculties. The I is the sovereign of the mind, and what we call will is the instrument of the I. Behind all of this, there is something more, of course, and the universal will is higher than the individual will, although the latter maintains a much closer contact than is generally supposed with the universal will. And when the lower self is conquered and the I is affirmed, a very close contact is established with the universal will, partaking of its wonderful power. The moment the I is affirmed and one finds oneself, an intimate connection is established between the individual and the universal will. But before a person can make use of the enormous energy made available to them, they must achieve mastery over the lower self. Think of the absurdity of a human being proclaiming that they manifest powers when they are actually a slave to the lower parts of their mental being, which must be subordinated. Think of a human being who is a slave to their moods, passions, animal appetites, and lower faculties, and who at the same time tries to proclaim the benefits of the will. I am not preaching asceticism, which seems to me to be a confession of weakness. I am talking about self-mastery, the reaffirmation of the I over the subordinate parts of oneself. From a higher point of view, this I is the only real self, and the rest is merely the human being as a whole. Before a human being can fully reaffirm the I, they must gain absolute control of the subordinate parts of the self. All things are beneficial when we learn to dominate them, but nothing is good when they dominate us. As long as we allow the lower parts of the self to give us orders, we will be their slaves. Only when the I ascends to its throne and raises the scepter is order established, and things assume the proper relationship with each other. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with those who are dominated by their lower selves. They are at a lower level of evolution and will rise in due time. What I am doing is drawing the attention of those who are already ready to the fact that the sovereign must reaffirm their will, and that the subjects must obey. There are orders to give and to execute. The rebellion must be crushed and the competent authority restored, and the time to do it is now. You have allowed your rebellious subjects to keep the king away from his throne. You have been allowing the mental kingdom to suffer from the misrule of irresponsible faculties. You have been slaves to appetite, to unworthy thoughts, passions, and negativity. The will has been set aside and the lower desire has usurped the throne. It is time to restore order in the mental kingdom. You are capable of reaffirming your control over any emotion, appetite, passion, or thought, thanks to the reaffirmation of the will. You can order fear to retreat, jealousy to leave your presence, hatred to disappear from your sight, anger to hide, and worry to stop bothering you. You can make uncontrolled appetite and passion submit and become humble slaves instead of masters, and all of this thanks to the reaffirmation of the I. In the same way, you can now surround yourself with the glorious company of courage, love, and self-control. You can crush the rebellion and establish peace and order in your mental kingdom as long as you express the command and insist on its execution. Before becoming an empire, you have to establish the right internal conditions. You must demonstrate your ability to govern your own kingdom. The first battle is the conquest of the lower self by the true self. Affirmation. I reaffirm the control of my true self. Repeat these words ardently and positively during the day and at least once every hour, and especially when you face conditions that tempt you to act according to the dictates of the lower self instead of the indications transmitted by the true self. In moments of doubt and indecision, pronounce these words with ardor, and the path ahead will become clear. Repeat them on several occasions once you lie down before sleeping. But make sure to back them up with a thought that inspires them, and not just repeat them like a parrot. From the mental image of the true self reaffirming its control over the lower planes of your own mind, you have to contemplate the king on his throne. You will become aware of an influx of new thoughts, and the things that once seemed difficult to you will now become much easier. You will feel that you have control in your hands, and that you are the master and not the slave. The thought you maintain will be manifested in action, and you will grow to become that which you have in mind, not exercise. Concentrate the mind firmly on the higher self and be inspired by it when you feel that you are going to give in to the instigations of the lower part of your nature. When you feel tempted to burst into anger, reaffirm the I, and the tone of your voice will decrease. Anger is unworthy of the developed self. When you feel annoyed and upset, remember what you are and rise above the feeling. When you feel fear, remember that the true self fears nothing, and reaffirm courage. When you feel the incitement of jealousy, think of your higher nature and laugh, and so on. You must reaffirm the true self and not allow yourself to be disturbed by elements from the lower plane of mentality. They are unworthy of you, and you must show them their place. Do not let these things dominate you. They must be your subjects, not your masters. You must move away from that plane, and the only way to do so is to move away from those phases of thought which only fit things to suit their desires. It may be difficult at first, but insist, and you will obtain that satisfaction that only comes when the lower parts of our nature are conquered. You have been a slave for a long time. Now is the time to free yourself. If you perform these exercises faithfully, at the end of the year you will be a different being, and you will look back with a compassionate smile at your old state. But for this, a certain effort is necessary. It is not a task for children, but for enthusiastic men and women. Will you make the effort? Chapter 5. The Secret of the Will. While psychologists may disagree on their theories regarding the nature of the will, none deny its existence or question its power. Everyone recognizes the power of a strong will. Everyone knows that it can be used to overcome the greatest obstacles. But few realize that the will is something that can be developed and strengthened through intelligent practice. They believe they can achieve wonders with a strong will, but instead of trying to develop it, they content themselves with empty lamentations. They just sigh and do nothing. Those who have deeply investigated the subject know that willpower, with all its latent possibilities and great powers, can be developed, disciplined, controlled, and directed, just like any other force of nature. No matter what theory you adopt about the nature of the will, you will get results as long as you practice intelligently. Personally, I hold a somewhat strange theory about the will. I believe that every human being has, potentially, a strong will, and that all they have to do is train their mind to be able to use it. I am convinced that in the highest regions of every human being's mind, there is a great reservoir of willpower waiting to be used. The current of the will runs through psychic wiring, and all you have to do is lift the mental trolley to make the energy come down and use it. And the supply is unlimited, because your small battery is connected to the great universal willpower plant, whose energy is inexhaustible. Your will doesn't need training, but your mind does. The mind is the instrument, and the supply of willpower is proportional to the excellence of the instrument through which it is manifested. You don't have to accept this theory if you don't like it. This lesson will fit your own theory as well as mine. He who develops his mind in a way that allows the force of will to be transmitted through it will have opened up wonderful possibilities for himself. Not only will he have found a great power within his reach, but he will be able to use faculties, talents, and skills whose existence he did not even imagine. This secret of the will is the magic key that opens all doors. Donald G. Mitchell once wrote, "Resolution is what manifests a man, but not a weak resolution, but a brazen determination. No erratic purposes, but that strong and indefatigable will that overcomes difficulties and dangers, just like a boy advancing through the icy lands of winter, that lights up his gaze and brain with a proud throb, launching himself toward the unattainable. Will turns men into giants. Many of us feel that if we could exercise our will, we could do wonders. But for some reason, it seems that we don't want to take the trouble, that we don't reach the true decisive point. We postpone it again and again. We talk vaguely about someday, but that day never comes. We instinctively feel the power of the will, but we lack the sufficient energy to exercise it, and for this reason, we let ourselves be carried along by the current. Unless some difficulty appears, some useful obstacle gets in our way, or some kind pain pushes us into action. In these cases, we are forced to reaffirm our will, and with that, we begin to get results. The problem is that we don't want anything to end up forcing us to exercise our willpower. We don't want to make an effort. We are mentally lazy and of weak desire. If you don't like the word desire, substitute it with aspiration. Some people call lower impulses desires and higher ones aspirations. It's a matter of words, so choose the one you prefer. That's where the problem lies. Put a person in danger of losing their life, or a woman about to lose a great love, and you will witness a surprising display of willpower from an unexpected source. Let a woman's child be threatened by some danger, and you will see how she manifests a degree of courage and will that sweeps away everything that gets in her way. And yet, that same woman will groan before a domineering husband and will lack the will to perform a simple task. A boy will do all kinds of tasks if he considers them a game, but he will barely be able to force himself to chop some firewood. A strong will follows in the wake of an intense desire. If you really want to do something, you will generally have to develop the willpower to achieve it. The problem is that you don't really want any of those things, and yet you blame it on your lack of will. You say you want to do it, but if you stop to think, you will see that you actually want to do something else. You are not willing to pay the price to get it. Stop for a moment and analyze this statement and apply it to your own case. You are mentally lazy, that's the problem. Don't tell me about lacking sufficient will. You have a great reservoir of will waiting for you to use it, but you are too lazy to do so. Now, if you are really interested in this issue, get to work and first find out what you really want to do, and then start working and do it. Don't worry about willpower. You will have all you want whenever you need it. The point is to get to that point where you decide to do it. That is the real test, resolution. Think about this for a bit, and decide if you really want to be a voluntarist with enough desire to get to work. Many excellent essays and books have been written on this topic, and all of them agree on recognizing the greatness of willpower, using the most enthusiastic terms to do so. But few have said anything about how those who do not possess this force, or possess it to a limited degree, can acquire it. Some have offered exercises with a view to strengthening the will, which in reality what they do is strengthen the mind, so that it can resort to its store of energy. But they have generally overlooked the fact that it is in autosuggestion where the secret of the mind's development lies, so that it can become an effective instrument of the will. Autosuggestion. I use my willpower. Repeat these words several times with tenacity and in a positive way, immediately after finishing this section. Then repeat them frequently throughout the day, at least once every hour, and especially when you face something that requires you to exercise willpower. Also, repeat it several times once you go to sleep. Now, these words will not mean anything unless you back them up with thought. In fact, thought is everything, and words are only clothespins on which thought hangs. So think about what you are saying, and be aware of what you are saying. At first, you will have to rely on faith and use the words with a confident expectation of the result. Keep the thought you are shaping in the store of willpower, and before long, you will discover that that thought takes shape in action, and that your willpower manifests itself. You will feel a surge of energy every time you repeat these words. You will find yourself overcoming difficulties and bad habits, and you will be surprised at the degree of smoothness that everything that comes from you shows. Exercise. Do at least one unpleasant task a day for a month. If there is one that you especially dislike and would like to avoid, that is precisely the one you will do. It's not about sacrificing yourself or becoming meek or anything like that. It's about exercising the will. Anyone can do what they like with joy, but to joyfully carry out what we dislike takes will, and that's how you must do the task. You will see that it is a very valuable discipline. Try it for a month and you will see how far you get. If you avoid this exercise, it is best that you stop here and acknowledge that you do not want willpower, that you are content to be where you are and to continue being a weakling. Chapter 6. How to become immune to damaging thought attraction. The first thing to do is eliminate fear and worry. Fearful thought is the cause of much unhappiness and many failures. I know you've heard it many times, but it's worth repeating. Fear is a mental habit that has stuck to us through negative thinking. Great expectations are a very powerful magnet. He who harbors intense and confident desires attracts the things that will help him: people, objects, circumstances, and environments, as long as he desires them with hope, confidence, security, and tranquility. It is also equally true that he who fears something usually manages to set in motion forces that will cause what he fears to happen to him. In reality, he who truly fears expects what he fears, and in the eyes of the law, it is the same as if he had truly desired it. The law operates in both cases. The principle is the same. The optimal way to overcome the habit of fear is to assume the mental attitude of courage, for the best way to get rid of darkness is to let in the light. Fighting a negative thought pattern by acknowledging its strength and trying to deny it through intense efforts is a waste of time. The best, safest, easiest, and fastest method is to assume the existence of the desired positive thought in its place. And by constantly dwelling on the positive thought, it will manifest in objective reality. So, instead of repeating, "I'm not afraid," you should say with resolve, "I am full of courage, I am brave." You should reaffirm, "There is nothing to fear," which, although it has the nature of a negation, simply denies the reality of the object that causes fear instead of admitting the fear itself and then denying it. To overcome fear, you have to hold on firmly to the mental attitude of courage. You must think about courage, say courage, and act with courage. You must keep the mental image of courage in front of you at all times until it becomes the normal mental attitude. You have to hold the ideal firmly before you, and little by little, its realization will be achieved. The ideal will become manifest. Let the word courage sink deep into your mind, and then hold it there firmly until the mind holds it where it belongs. Think of yourself as someone brave. Consider that you act with courage in delicate situations. Understand that there is nothing to fear, that worry and fear never helped and never will help anyone. Understand that fear paralyzes effort and that courage encourages activity. The confident, bold, and enthusiastic human being who says, "I can do it and I will succeed," is a very powerful magnet. He attracts to himself exactly what he needs to achieve success. Things seem to pop up in his path and people say he is lucky. Nonsense. Luck has nothing to do with it. It's all about the mental attitude. And the mental attitude of the human being who says, "I can't," or "I'm afraid," also determines the measure of success. There's no mystery to it. You just have to look around to understand the truth of what I have just said. Have you ever met a lucky person who lacked the "I can do it and I will succeed" thought deeply ingrained within them? They will overtake the "I can't" human being, even if the latter may have more skill and ability. The first mental attitude brings latent qualities to the surface, in addition to attracting help from the outside, while the second mental attitude not only attracts "I can't" people and things, but also prevents that human being from manifesting their own powers. I have demonstrated the correctness of these opinions like many others, and the number of people who are aware of this increases day by day. Don't waste your thought force. Use it to your benefit. Stop attracting failure, unhappiness, disharmony, sorrow. Start now and emit a stream of bright, positive, and happy thought. Let your main thought be, "I can do it and I will succeed." Think, "I can do it and I will succeed." Dream, "I can do it and I will succeed." Say, "I can do it and I will succeed," and do. "I can do it and I will succeed." Live on the "I can do it and I will succeed" plane, and before you know it, you will feel the new vibrations manifesting in action. You will perceive them getting results. You will be aware of a new point of view. You will understand that you belong to yourself. When you join the legion of the "I can do it and I will succeed," you will feel better, act better, see better, be better in every way. Fear is the parent of worry, hatred, jealousy, malice, anger, discontent, failure, and all the rest. The person who gets rid of fear will discover that the rest of the litter disappears. The only way to be free is to get rid of fear. Pull it up by the roots. I consider the conquest of fear to be the most important step that those who wish to master the application of thought force must take. As long as fear dominates you, you will not be in a position to progress in the sphere of thought, and I must insist that you start working right now to get rid of that obstacle. You can do it if you try with determination, and once you have gotten rid of that vileness, life will seem totally different to you. You will feel happier, freer, stronger, and more positive, and you will be more successful in all your endeavors in life. Start today. Decide that this intruder must disappear. Make no compromises with it. Insist on its absolute surrender. The task may seem difficult at first, but each time you oppose it, you will weaken it, and you will become stronger. Stop feeding it. Starve it, for it cannot live in an atmosphere of daring thoughts. So, start filling your mind with daring, good, and intense thoughts. Occupy yourself with thinking about daring, and fear will die on its own. Daring is positive, fear is negative, and you can be sure that the positive will eventually prevail. As long as fear hangs around with its buts, what ifs, suppose, I'm afraid, I can't, maybe, and all the rest of its cowardly suggestions, you will not be able to use your thought force with all its power. Once you get it out of the way, you can sail without obstacles, and every inch of your sails will catch the wind. Fear is a Jonah, so throw it overboard. The whale that swallows it has all my sympathy. I recommend that you start doing some of the activities that you could carry out if you were not afraid to try. Start working on them, affirming courage continuously, and you will be surprised to find that a changed mental attitude will clear the obstacles from your path, making things much easier than you could imagine. Exercises of this type will develop you, and you will feel much more gratified by seeing the results of such a simple practice. In front of you are many things waiting to be done, which you could master just by getting rid of the yoke of fear, just by refusing to accept its suggestions, boldly reaffirming the I and its power. And the best way to defeat fear is to reaffirm courage and stop thinking about fear. In this way, you will train the mind in new habits of thought, eradicating the old negative thoughts that have been sinking and repressing you. Carry the word courage with you as if it were your password, and manifest it in action. Remember that the only thing to fear is fear itself, and that you don't even have to fear fear, for at most it is a cowardly type who will run away if you face it. Chapter 7. The Transmutation of Negative Thought. Worry is the child of fear, so if you get rid of fear, worry will die from a lack of nourishment. This advice is very old, and yet it is always worth repeating, because it is a lesson that we need to keep in mind at all times. Some people believe that if we kill fear and worry, we will never be able to achieve anything. I have read editorials in major newspapers where writers argue that without worry, one can never perform any of life's great tasks because it is necessary to stimulate interest. That's just nonsense, no matter who says it. Worry never helped anyone achieve anything. On the contrary, it stands as an obstacle in the way of achievement and fulfillment. The motive underlying action and getting things done is desire and interest. If you ardently desire something, you become very interested in its fulfillment and are willing to take advantage of anything that can help you get what you want. Furthermore, your mind begins to work on the subconscious plane, causing many valuable and important ideas to appear in the field of consciousness. Desire and interest are the causes that lead to success. Worry is not desire. It is true that if the environment becomes intolerable, one will be pushed by desperation to make some efforts that will result in the elimination of undesirable conditions and the acquisition of others that are more in harmony with desire. But that is just another form of desire, the person who longs for something different from what they have. And when their desire becomes intense enough, all their interest is focused on its achievement, making a powerful effort and achieving the change. However, it was not worry that caused the effort. Worry could content itself with wringing its hands and groaning, "Woe is me," exhausting the nerves without achieving anything. Desire acts in another way. It increases when the person's conditions become intolerable. And finally, when the person feels the pain so intensely that they can no longer bear it, they say, "I can't take it anymore. I'm going to change." And that's what they do. Then desire appears in action. The person continues to desire a change in the worst way, which is the best way, and when their interest and attention are focused on the task of liberation, they begin to make things happen. Worry never achieves anything. Worry is negative and mournful. Desire and ambition are positive and vital. A person can worry endlessly and still not achieve anything. But let that person transmute their worry and discontent into intense desire and interest, along with the belief that they are capable of bringing about change. The idea of, "I can do it, and I will succeed." And that is when things begin to happen. Yes, fear and worry must disappear before we can achieve much. One must expel these negative intruders and replace them with confidence and hope. Transmute worry into intense desire. Then you will discover that interest awakens, and you will begin to think things that are interesting to you. Thoughts will come to you from the great reserve accumulated in your mind, and you will begin to manifest them in action. Furthermore, you will harmonize with similar thoughts from other people. attracting to you help and assistance from the great volume of thought waves that fill the world. One attracts to oneself thought waves that correspond to the predominant thoughts in one's own mind, one's mental attitude. It also sets in motion the great law of attraction, by which it attracts to itself other people who could help it, and in turn is attracted to others whom it could help. This law of attraction is no joke, no metaphysical nonsense, but an important living and active principle of nature, as anyone can verify through experimentation and observation. To succeed in anything that is greatly desired, the desire must be evident in order to attract it. He who has weak desires attracts very little. The more intense the desire, the greater the force that is set in motion. You have to want something intensely enough before you can get it. You must desire it more than anything else, and you must be willing to pay the required price. The price is getting rid of certain lesser desires that stand in the way of the fulfillment of the most intense one. Comforts, conveniences, fun, entertainment, and many other things must disappear, although not always. It all depends on what you want. As a general rule, the greater what is desired, the greater the price you will have to pay for it. Nature believes in adequate compensation. But if you really desire something with true ardor, you will pay the price without saying anything, because the desire will belittle the importance of everything else. Do you say you intensely want something and that you do everything possible to get it? Bah! You are just pretending to desire it. Do you desire it as much as a prisoner longs for freedom, as a dying person longs for life? Look at the almost miraculous things achieved by prisoners who desired freedom. Look at how they worked to get through metal plates and stone walls with very simple tools. Is your desire that intense? Do you strive to obtain what you desire as if your life depended on it? Nonsense! You don't know what desire is. I tell you that if a person wants something as much as a prisoner desires freedom, or as a very vital person desires life, that person will be able to sweep away apparently immovable obstacles and impediments. The key to achieving it is desire, confidence, and will. This key opens many doors. Fear paralyzes desire. It frightens life. You must get rid of fear. There were times in my life when fear took hold of me, taking possession of my vitality, and in which I lost all hope, all interest, all ambition, and all desire. But thank goodness I always managed to get rid of the monster's harassment and face my difficulties like a man. And lo and behold, things started to get easier for me. Sometimes the difficulty melted away, or I was given the means to overcome it, avoid it, or get around it. It's strange how it all works. No matter how great the difficulty is, when we finally face it with courage and confidence in ourselves, we seem to recover, and then we wonder what we were so scared of. It is not a mere fantasy, but the way a powerful law operates, which we do not fully understand, but which we can demonstrate at any time. There are people who often ask, "It's all well and good for you New Thought people to say, 'Don't worry.' But what can a person do when they think about all the obstacles that can block their way and that can upset their plans?" Well, all I can say is that that person is being foolish by worrying about problems that might arise in the future. Most of the things we worry about never happen. A large proportion of the rest comes to us in a milder form than anticipated, and there are always other circumstances that appear at the same time that help us overcome the problem. The future not only holds difficulties for us to overcome, but also agents that will help us overcome the difficulties. Things adjust themselves. We are prepared to face any problem that arises, and when the time comes, we always find a way to deal with it. God not only tempers the wind for the shorn lamb, but he also tempers the shorn lamb for the wind. The winds and the shearing do not come together. There is usually enough time for the lamb to acclimate, and then it has wool again before the cold arrives. It has been said, and with much reason, that 9/10 of worries are about things that never happen, and that the other 1/10 was about things of little or no importance. So, what is the point of using all your reserve forces to worry about future problems? It's better to wait to worry until the problems actually appear. You will discover that having accumulated this energy, you will be able to face any kind of setback that comes your way. What consumes all the energy in normal human beings? Is it the actual overcoming of difficulties or the worry about supposed problems? We are always with tomorrow, tomorrow, and that tomorrow does not end up being as terrible as we had imagined. Tomorrow is fine. It carries both good and problematic aspects within it. When I stop to think about all the things that I once feared would happen to me, I can't help but laugh. Where is all that now? I don't know, and I have almost completely forgotten that I once feared them. It is not necessary to fight worry, for that is not the way to overcome that habit. It is enough to practice concentration, and then learn to concentrate on something right in front of you, and then you will discover that the worrying thought fades away. There are better ways to overcome objectionable thoughts than fighting them. Learn to concentrate on thoughts of an opposite character, and you will have solved the problem. When the mind is full of worrying thoughts, it cannot find time to make plans that will benefit you. But when you concentrate on bright and useful thoughts, you will discover that it begins to work subconsciously. And when the time comes, you will discover all kinds of plans and methods with which you can deal with the demands that appear in your way. Maintain a correct mental attitude, and everything will fall into place. Worry makes no sense. It has never solved anything, and it never will. Bright, cheerful, and happy thoughts attract bright, cheerful, and happy things, while worry drives them away. Cultivate the correct mental attitude. Chapter 8: The Law of Mental Control. Your thoughts are either faithful servants or tyrannical masters, whichever you allow them to be. You have the final say, so choose. They will either dedicate themselves to work under the direction of a firm will, doing everything they can, not only during waking hours but also when you sleep. Part of our best mental operations take place when our conscious mind rests, as shown by the fact that when morning comes, we find that bothersome problems seem to have been resolved during the night, after we had seemingly dismissed them from our minds. Or they will run wild and turn us into their slaves if we are foolish enough to allow it. More than half of the world's population is a slave to any erratic thought that is pleased to torment them. Your mind has been given to you to use it well, not for it to use you. Very few seem to know this and understand the art of controlling the mind. The key to this mystery is concentration. A little practice would develop in every human being the power to use the mental machinery properly. When you have a mental task to carry out, concentrate on it to the exclusion of everything else, and you will discover that the mind converges on what needs to be done, and that everything is resolved quickly. There is no friction, and all unnecessary movement or waste of energy is avoided. All available energies are used, and every revolution of the mental drive wheel has a purpose. It is worth being a competent mental engineer. And the human being who knows how to direct his mental engine knows that one of the most important things is to be able to stop when the work has been done. He does not keep shoveling coal into the boiler and keeping the pressure high once his work is finished, or when the daily part of the work is over. He knows that the boilers must be shut down until the next day. Some people act as if the engine should always keep running, whether there's something to do or not, and then they complain that it wears out and that this and that need to be repaired. Mental engines are wonderful machines, and what they require is intelligent care. To those familiar with the laws of mental control, it will seem absurd that someone should stay awake all night worrying about the problems of that day, or, more often, the problems of tomorrow. It is as easy to slow down the mind as it is a motor, and thousands are learning to do it now thanks to new thought. The best way to achieve this is to think about another subject, as different as possible from the intrusive thought. It is useless to fight against an unacceptable thought for the purpose of throwing it out. It is a great waste of energy, and the more you say, "I won't think about that," the more it comes to mind because you are keeping it in front of you to beat it. Let it go. Don't think about it anymore. Concentrate your mind on something completely different and keep your attention there through an effort of the will. A little practice would work wonders in that regard. Attention can only be concentrated on one thing at a time, so direct all your attention to one thought and the others will slip away. Try it and see. Chapter 9. Reaffirming the Vital Force. I have already spoken about the advantages of getting rid of fear. Now, I would like to introduce life into you. Many of you have lived as if you were dead, without ambition, energy, vitality, interest, or life. We are not going anywhere that way. You are stagnant. Wake up and manifest some life. This is not a place where you can behave like the living dead. It is a place for people who are fully awake, active, alive, and what we need here is a good general awakening, although that would require at least a loud trumpet blast from Gabriel's fife. It seems that only that would wake up some people who go around believing they are alive, but who are actually dead with respect to everything that makes life worth living. We must allow life to flow into us and to express itself naturally. You must not allow the small or large worries of everyday life to depress you and make you lose your vitality. Reaffirm the vital force within you and manifest it in all your thoughts, actions, and deeds. Before you know it, you will be smiling and full of vitality and energy. Put some life into your work, into your pleasures, into yourself. Stop doing things halfway and start being interested in what you are doing, saying, and thinking. It is amazing how interesting the ordinary things of life can seem to us just by being awake. We are surrounded by interesting things that happen every moment, but we will not be aware of them unless we reaffirm our vital force and start being truly alive instead of just existing. No man or woman has ever been anything unless they breathed life into their daily tasks, their actions, and their thoughts. What the world needs is living men and women. You only have to look into the eyes of those you know to discover how many of them are really alive. Most of them lack that expression of conscious life that distinguishes one who lives from one who simply exists. I want you to acquire that sense of conscious life so that you can manifest it in your life and demonstrate what mental science has done for you. I want you to get to work today and start transforming yourself according to the latest pattern. You can achieve this if you put the right interest into the task. Affirmation and exercise. Concentrate your mind on the thought that your inner I is much more alive and that you fully manifest life, both mentally and physically, and hold that thought there, helping yourself through constant repetitions of the password. Do not let that thought escape you and always push it toward the focus of the mind. Keep it in front of your mental vision as much as possible. Repeat the password when you wake up in the morning and when you go to bed at night. Repeat it at mealtime and whenever you can throughout the day, at least once every hour. Form a mental image of yourself full of life and energy. Always rise to the occasion whenever possible. When you start a task, repeat, "I am alive," and breathe as much life as possible into the task. If you feel a little depressed, say, "I am alive," and then take a few deep breaths, and with each inhalation, let your mind hold the thought that you are inhaling strength and life. And as you exhale, hold the thought that you are exhaling all the old, dead, and negative states, which you love to get rid of. Then end with an ardent and vigorous affirmation. "I am alive," and mean it. Allow your thoughts to take shape in action. Do not content yourself with repeating that you are alive. You must demonstrate it with your actions. Be interested in doing things. Do not space out or daydream. Get into the matter and live. Chapter 10. Forming the Habit Mind. Professor William James, a well-known psychologist and writer, rightly said, "The most important thing in all education is to turn our nervous system into an ally instead of an enemy. To do this, we must make all useful actions habitual and automatic as soon as possible, and carefully avoid everything that could be harmful. In acquiring a new habit, or in breaking an old one, it is necessary that we throw ourselves into it with an initiative as intense and determined as possible. No exception should be allowed to happen until the new habit is well rooted in life. Do not miss the first opportunity you have to act on all the resolutions you make and any emotional impulse you may experience in the direction of the habits you aspire to incorporate." This advice will be familiar to all students of mental science, as it deals with the matter much more simply than any of us. It instills in us the importance of transferring the right impulses to the subconscious mind, so that they become automatic and a second skin. Our subconscious mind is a great storehouse of all kinds of suggestions, both from ourselves and from others, and since it is the habit mind, we must be careful and send it the right material from which it can create habits. If we get used to carrying out certain activities, we can be sure that the subconscious mind will make it easier for us to do the same thing over and over again, becoming easier each time, until in the end we are firmly tied with the ropes and chains of habit, of custom, and it becomes more or less difficult, sometimes almost impossible, to free ourselves from that abhorrent thing. We must cultivate good habits for when the time comes to exercise them. The time will come when we must show off our best efforts, and it is up to us right now that when the need arises, we are ready to do what is right, automatically and almost without thinking, or struggling to get rid of the chains of the opposite of what we desire at that moment. We must be vigilant at all times to avoid the formation of undesirable habits. It may not seem harmful to do a certain thing today, or it may not seem so to us tomorrow either, but it may be very harmful to create the habit of doing that particular thing. If you find yourself in the position of having to answer the question, which of these two things should I do? The best answer is, I will do what I would want to become a habit for me. When forming a new habit, or breaking an old one, we must undertake that work with all possible enthusiasm, in order to gain as much ground as possible before the energy expands when it finds the friction of opposing habits already formed. We must begin by creating the most intense impression possible on the subconscious mind. Then we have to constantly be on guard against the temptations that may arise to break the new resolution, just for this one time. This idea of just for this one time ends more good resolutions than any other cause. The moment one gives in to the just for this one time, a wedge is introduced that will eventually break the resolution. It is also very important that every time you resist temptation, your resolution becomes stronger. Act on your resolution as soon and as often as possible, because with each manifestation of thought in action, it becomes stronger. Every time you support it with an action, you are reinforcing the original resolution. The mind has been compared to a folded sheet of paper. From that moment on, it always has the tendency to fold along the same crease unless we create a new crease, which is what it will follow from then on. The creases are habits, and every time we make or create one, it becomes easier for the mind to fold along the same creases. We must have the right mental creases. Chapter 11. The Psychology of Emotion. It is possible to think of emotions as something separate from habit. We can easily think of acquiring habits of action and even of thought. But we can also consider emotions as something related to feeling and quite separate from intellectual effort. However, despite the distinction between the two, both depend largely on habit, and one can repress, increase, develop, and change one's own emotions, just as one can regulate habits in the way one acts and sees things. Psychology holds the axiom: emotions are deepened by repetition. If a person allows a certain feeling to take hold of them, it will be easier for them to give in to that same emotion on a second occasion, and so on until that particular emotion or feeling becomes a habit for them. If an undesirable emotion shows an inclination to dwell permanently within you, the most convenient thing would be for you to start working to get rid of it, or at least to master it. And the best time to do it is at the beginning, because each repetition makes the habit more ingrained and the task of displacing it more difficult. Have you ever felt jealous or envious? If so, you will remember how insidious its first approach was, how subtly it poured hateful suggestions into your willing ear, and how little by little, with the continuity of those suggestions, you finally ended up seeing through the green prism of envy or jealousy. Envy has an effect on the bile and poisons the blood. That's why it is associated with the color green. You will remember how it seemed to grow, to take possession of you until you could barely shake it off. The next time it was easier for you to feel envious or jealous. It seemed to bring to your presence all kinds of objects that apparently justified your suspicions and feelings. Everything seemed green, that fat green monster, and the same thing happens with every feeling or emotion. If you give in to a fit of anger, it will be easier for you to feel angry the next time, in the face of a minor provocation. The habit of feeling and acting meanly doesn't take long to take root in a new habitat as long as it is encouraged to do so. Worry is the great habit that tends to get fatter. People start by worrying about important issues, and then they start doing it about trifles. And then the slightest insignificance worries and upsets them. They imagine that all kinds of fatal events are about to befall them. If they start a trip, they are sure they will crash or sink. If a telegram arrives, it undoubtedly contains horrible news. If a child seems a little quiet, the worried mother only thinks that they will get sick and die. If the husband seems pensive and is thinking about some business, the good wife is convinced that he is starting to stop loving her, and she gives in to crying. It is the never-ending story. Worry, worry, worry. And every time you give in to it, the habit gets stronger. After a short time, that continuous thought goes into action. Not only is the mind poisoned by those sad thoughts, but the forehead begins to show deep wrinkles between the eyebrows and the voice adopts that raspy, complaining tone so common among worried people. The mental state known as critical is another emotion that gets fatter with exercise. First, a fault is found in one thing, then in another, and finally in everything. The person becomes a chronic grumbler, a nuisance to friends and family, and someone whom strangers prefer to avoid. Women can become great grumblers, but not because men are better, but simply because a grumbling man can get rid of the habit thanks to other men who will not put up with his nonsense. He realizes that he is only making his situation worse and shakes off the habit, while a woman has more opportunities to indulge in it. Because this continuous grumbling is nothing more than a matter of habit. It is born and develops from a small seed, and every time one indulges in it, it puts down another root, branch, or tendril, becoming more and more entrenched in the person who has provided it with ground to grow. Envy, lack of generosity, or gossip are habits of this type. The seeds are latent inside all human beings, and they only need good ground and a little watering to gain vigor and strength. Every time you give in to these negative emotions, it becomes easier for you to fall back into them or similar ones. Sometimes, by encouraging an unworthy emotion, You are creating the conditions for the development of a whole family of these mental weeds. Now, this is not an orthodox sermon against sin or bad thoughts. It is only to draw your attention to the law that underlies the psychology of emotion. It is nothing new. It is as old as the world, so old that many of us have forgotten it. If you wish to manifest these unpleasant and ungrateful traits continuously and suffer the unhappiness they bring, do not stop doing it. It is your business, and you have the right to do so. It is not my business, and I am not preaching to you, for I have enough to do to be attentive to my own undesirable habits and actions. I am only telling you about the law that regulates the matter, and the rest is up to you. If you wish to liquidate these habits, it is convenient for you to know that you have several ways to do so. For example, whenever you discover yourself giving in to a negative thought or feeling, you must grab them and say firmly, "Get out of here." At first, it will not be so easy, and it will get its hair on end, arch its back, and growl as if it were an offended cat. But don't worry. You just have to say, "Disappear." The next time it will not be so confident and aggressive, but will show a little fear. On each occasion that you repress or drown a tendency of this type, it will become weaker, and you will become stronger. Professor James says, "Refuse to express a passion, and it will die. Count to 10 before expressing your anger, and then it will seem ridiculous to do so." Whistling to gather courage is not a mere rhetorical figure. On the other hand, sit all day in a dejected posture, sigh, and answer everything they say to you in a mournful voice, and you can be sure that your melancholy will not disappear. There is no more valuable precept in moral education than this, as all who have experienced it attest. If we wish to conquer emotional tendencies in ourselves, we must dedicate ourselves in principle, assiduously and with cold blood, to practicing the opposite dispositions that we would prefer to cultivate. Relax your frown, light up your gaze, contract the dorsal aspect instead of the ventral. Speak in a higher tone and make a great compliment. Your heart must be really frigid if with all that it does not begin to thaw. Chapter 12. Developing New Brain Cells. I have talked about the plan to get rid of undesirable emotional states and expel them. But there is a much better method, which is to cultivate the sensation, or emotion directly opposite to the one you wish to eradicate. We are very capable of considering ourselves as a result of our emotions and sensations and of believing that these sensations and emotions are us. However, that is far from the case. It is true that most of humanity is a slave to its emotions and sensations, that it is very dominated by them. Individuals believe that sensations are elements that direct us and from which one cannot free oneself, so they stop rebelling. They give in to the sensations without a doubt, although they may know that the emotion or mental trait is calculated to hurt them and to cause unhappiness and failure instead of happiness and success. They tell themselves, "We are made that way," and they believe it. The new psychology teaches people better things. It tells them that they are masters of their emotions and sensations instead of their slaves. It teaches them that new brain cells can be developed that will manifest in desirable tendencies, and that the old brain cells that have manifested so unpleasantly can be added to the list of things to be retired, allowing them to atrophy from lack of use. People can transform themselves and change their entire nature. It is not a mere theory, but a palpable fact that has been demonstrated by thousands of people, and that is attracting more and more attention from humanity. Whatever mental theory we support, we must admit that the brain is the organ and the instrument of the mind, at least in our present state of existence, and that is the way we should consider the brain. It is like a wonderful musical instrument, which has millions of keys, with which we create innumerable combinations of sounds. We come into the world with certain tendencies, temperaments, and predispositions. We can attribute these tendencies to heredity or to pre-existence theories, but the fact is the same. It does not vary. Some keys seem to respond to our touch more easily than others. Some notes seem to react better to the passage of the current of circumstances over the strings, and others vibrate with less ease. But we know that unless we make an effort of will to turn off the sound of some of those strings that sound so easily, it will eventually become more difficult to make them sound, and it will not be so easy for them to vibrate to the sound of circumstances. And if we deal with some of the other keys that do not quite produce a clear note, we will soon tune them. Their notes will sound clear and vibrant, and they will drown out the less pleasant sounds. We have millions of brain cells that we do not use and that are waiting for our care. We are used to dealing with some of them, and we work tirelessly with others. We can give those cells some rest if we use others. The brain can seem incredibly trained and cultivated to someone who has not paid attention to the matter. Mental attitudes can be acquired and cultivated, changed, and discarded at will. There is no longer an excuse for people to manifest unpleasant or harmful mental states. We all have the remedy in our hands. We acquire habits of thought, feeling, and action through their repeated use. We can be born with a tendency in a certain direction, or we can acquire tendencies through the suggestions of others. There are also those that come from reading and listening to teachers and masters. We are a bundle of mental habits. Every time we give in to an undesirable thought or habit, it becomes easier for us to repeat that thought or action. Mental scientists usually talk about desirable thoughts or mental attitudes as positive and undesirable ones as negative. There is a good reason for this. The mind instinctively recognizes certain things as good for the individual to whom it belongs and makes way for those thoughts, putting the least resistance to them. They have a much greater effect than an undesirable thought, and a positive thought can neutralize several negative ones. The best way to overcome undesirable or negative thoughts, as well as feelings and emotions, is to cultivate positive ones. The positive thought is the hardier plant, and in time it will end up expelling the negative one by taking away the necessary nourishment for its existence. At first, the negative thought will offer vigorous resistance, of course, because it will be fighting for its survival. As is said today, it sees its end approaching, as long as the positive thought is allowed to grow and develop, and consequently, it makes things difficult for the person until the person stops feeding it. Brain cells dislike being left aside as much as any other form of living energy, and they rebel and fight until they become so weak that they can no longer do so. The best method is to ignore these mental weeds and spend as much time as possible watering the new and beautiful plants in the garden of the mind, taking care of them and caring for them. For example, if you tend to hate people, you can overcome that negative thought by cultivating love in its place. Think about love and manifest it as much as possible. Cultivate thoughts of benevolence and act as kindly as you can with everyone you come in contact with. At first, it will not be easy at all, but little by little, love will dominate hate until it begins to decline and wither. If you tend toward sadness, cultivate a smile and a cheerful view of things. Insist on having the corners of your lips curved upward and maintain the attitude of seeing the good side of things. The devils of sadness will rebel, of course, but ignore them and continue to cultivate optimism and joy. Let your motto be bright, cheerful, and happy, and try to live up to it. These recipes may seem old and worn out, but they are psychological truths, and you can use them to your advantage. If you once understand the nature of this matter, you will understand and take advantage of the affirmations and autosuggestions of several schools. By using this method, you can become energetic instead of lazy, active instead of slothful. New Thought people often have a lot to say about controlling thought. And in reality, it is necessary to control thought in order to get results. But something else is also needed. You must manifest the thought until it becomes a habit in you. Thoughts take shape in action, in manifestation, and in turn, actions influence them. So by manifesting certain ways of seeing things, the actions react on the mind, increasing the development of the part of the mind that is closely related to that act. Every time the mind considers a thought, the resulting action is easier, and every time an action is executed, it becomes easier to harbor the corresponding thought. So, you see, action and reaction is something that works both ways. If you feel cheerful and happy, it is very natural for you to laugh. If you laugh a little, you will begin to feel bright and cheerful. Do you understand what I mean? I will explain it to you in a few words. If you want to cultivate a certain habit or action, start cultivating the corresponding mental attitude. And to cultivate that mental attitude, start manifesting or carrying out the act that corresponds to the thought. Now, check if you can apply this rule. Take care of something that you feel needs to be done, but that you don't feel like taking care of. Cultivate the thought that leads to that attitude and tell yourself, I like doing this and that, and then carry out the movement with joy. Remember, and manifest the thought that you want to take care of that task. Be interested in doing it. Study the best way to do it. Think about it. Take it seriously. And you will see how you do it with a considerable amount of pleasure and interest. You will be cultivating a new habit. If you prefer to try it with some mental trait that you would like to get rid of, the process works in the same way. Start by cultivating the opposite trait. Think about it and manifest it with all your soul. Then observe the change that will happen to you. Do not be discouraged by the resistance you will find at first, but you should say to yourself, with joy, I can do it, and I will succeed, and make an effort. What matters in this case is to stay cheerful and interested in the process. If you succeed, the rest is a piece of cake. Chapter 13, The Power of Attraction, the Force of Desire. We have already seen the need to get rid of fear so that your desire has the maximum strength to work. Assuming that you have come to master this part of the task, or at least started on the path that leads to such mastery, I will now draw your attention to another important related issue. I am referring to the issue of mental leaks. No, I'm not talking about the leak that comes from your failure to keep your own secrets, which is important, but part of another matter. The leak I'm referring to is the one caused by the habit of attention being attracted and distracted by any fantasy or whim. To achieve something, it is necessary for the mind to fall in love with it and be aware of its existence, almost to the exclusion of everything else. You must fall in love with what you wish to obtain, just as if you met the woman or man you wish to marry. I am not saying that you should become a monomaniac on the subject and lose all interest in everything else in this world. That wouldn't work, as the mind needs recreation and change. What I'm saying is that you have to be so focused on the desired object that everything else seems to have secondary importance. A man in love can be very pleasant to everyone else and carry out his duties and enjoy the pleasures of life in good spirits. But internally, all he says to himself is, "There's only one girl for me," and all his actions are aimed at getting that girl and creating a comfortable home for her. Do you understand what I mean? You must fall in love with what you desire, and you must fall in love to the core. None of that today, yes, and tomorrow no kind of love, but the old kind that made a young man unable to go to bed if he didn't take a walk near his girlfriend's house to make sure the building was still there. That's the way, and the man or woman seeking success must make that desired thing their main passion. They have to concentrate their mind on the great occasion, on the optimal opportunity. Success is jealous. It asks a man for all his affection, and if he starts flirting with other fair soothsayers, it doesn't take long for it to turn its back on him. If a man deviates from his main interest, he will end up being a loser. Mental force works best when it is concentrated. All available forces must be dedicated to what is desired. Just as a man who is in love does not stop making plans with which he can please the beautiful woman of the moment, so will he who is in love with his work or business. And the result will be that 100 plans will be manifested in the field of consciousness, many of them of great importance. The mind operates on the subconscious plane, remember that, and almost always in accordance with the predominant passion or desire. It will arrange things and compose plans and projects, which will arise in your consciousness when you need them most, and you will feel like screaming with joy, as if you had received great external help. But if you scatter your thought force, the subconscious mind will not know how to please you, and the result will be that you will not notice this source of help and assistance. In addition to that, you will be unconscious of the powerful result of concentrating thought on the conscious elaboration of the details of your plans. And besides, the being whose mind is filled with a dozen interests fails to exert the power of attraction that he who only has one guiding passion manifests, and he cannot attract people, things, and results that would help him in the drafting of his plans. He will also fail to place himself in the current of attraction in which he would come into contact with those who would be happy to help him by sharing interests. I have noticed, in my own affairs, that when I allow any external distraction to deviate me from my usual line of work, it doesn't take long before I start getting receipts back, and my affairs show clear signs of a lack of vitality. Now, some will say that the cause is that I will have left some matters unresolved, matters that I would have done if my mind had been concentrated on them. That is true, but I have also perceived similar results in cases where there was nothing to do, cases where the seed was sown and the harvest only had to ripen. And in those cases, as soon as I directed my thought to the matter, the seed began to sprout. I am not suggesting that I had to emit a huge amount of mental waves with the idea of affecting other people. Not at all. I simply began to realize that I was in possession of something very beneficial, which interested many other people, and that I was delighted that everyone could have access to it. My thought seemed to revitalize the work, and the seeds began to bear fruit. It is not a fantasy, as I have experienced it on several occasions. I have talked with many other people about this topic and have discovered that our experiences fit perfectly. So you should not fall into the habit of allowing these mental leaks. Keep the desire fresh and active, and let it do its work without the interference of opposing desires. Stay in love with what you wish to achieve. Feed your fantasy with it. Consider it achieved, but do not lose interest. Keep your attention on your primary interest and keep your guiding passion strong and vigorous. Do not be a mental polygamist. The human being only needs one mental love, that is, have your desires one at a time. Some scientists have stated that something that could be called love underlies all life. They argue that the plant's love for water makes it extend its roots until it finds the beloved object. They say that the flower's love for the sun makes it turn away from dark places so it can receive light. The so-called chemical affinities are actually a form of love. And desire is a manifestation of this love of universal life. So I'm not just using a metaphor when I tell you that you must love what you want to achieve. Nothing but an intense love will allow you to overcome the many obstacles that will stand in your way. Only that love will allow you to endure the heavy trials of that task. The more you desire something, the more you will love it. And the more you love it, the more intense the force of attraction toward its achievement will be, both within you and outside of you. So, love one thing at a time. Do not be a mental Mormon. Chapter 14, The Great Dynamic Forces. You have already noticed the difference between successful and strong people and those who fail and are weak. You are aware of the differences that characterize them, but it is somewhat difficult to express what those differences are. Let's study the matter a little. Burton said, "The longer I live, the more I am sure that the great difference between human beings, the weak and the powerful, the important and the insignificant, lies in energy and in an unbreakable determination to establish a purpose and throw oneself at it for life or death. This quality will achieve everything that is possible to achieve in this world, and no talent, circumstances, or opportunities will turn a bipedal creature into a man if he lacks it. Energy and an unbreakable determination. Both will overcome powerful barriers and the greatest obstacles, and yet they must be used together. Energy without determination is wasted. Many human beings have energy, so much that it overflows, and yet they lack concentration. They suffer from the concentrated force that would allow them to lead their energy to the right place. Energy is not as scarce as many imagine. I can look around me at any time and point out a few people I know who are full of energy. Many of them seem to have too much, and yet, for some reason, they do not seem to be able to make progress. They do nothing but waste their energies. Now they get a whim for one thing, and then for the next. They will take care of some trivial matter without interest or importance, and they will waste energy and nervous force to help them in their effort. But when they finish with it, it turns out that they have obtained nothing. Others who have a lot of energy fail to direct willpower towards the desired end. Unbreakable determination. Those are the words. Don't you shiver with their force. If you have something to do, get to work and do it. Gather your energy and then guide and direct it with your will, breathing into it that unbreakable determination, and you will achieve what you want. Everyone has a gigantic will within them, but most of us are too lazy to use it. We cannot encourage ourselves enough to say, sincerely, I will achieve it. If we could arm ourselves with courage to that point, and then hold it so that it does not slip away, we would be able to make use of that wonderful power, the human will. Man has only a slight idea about the power of the will, but those who have studied the hidden teachings know that the will is one of the great dynamic forces of the universe, and that if it is used and directed properly, it is capable of achieving almost miraculous things. Energy and unbreakable determination. Aren't they magnificent words? Engrave them in your memory. Impress them on the wax of your mind as if they were a stamp, so that they become a constant inspiration for you in your moments of need. If you could make those words vibrate in your being, you would be a giant among pygmies. Repeat them over and over again, and you will see how you find yourself full of new life. You will see how your blood circulates, how your nerves tingle. Turn those words into a part of yourself, and then return renewed to the battle of life, reanimated and strengthened. Put them into practice. Energy and unbreakable determination. Let that become the motto of your daily life, and you will be one of the few individuals capable of getting things done. Many people are repressed and do not give their best because they underestimate themselves in comparison to those who succeed in life, or rather, they overestimate those who are successful in comparison to themselves. One of the most curious things that those who have come into contact with people who have arrived can perceive is that those people who have succeeded are not extraordinary. When you meet an important writer, you feel a little disappointed to realize that he is a very normal person. He does not have a brilliant conversation, and in fact you frequent a lot of ordinary people who seem much more brilliant than this man, who dazzled you with the light of his books. You meet a great statesman, and he does not seem half as wise as a lot of old people in your town who waste their wisdom by throwing it into the air. You meet an industrial magnate, and he does not give you the impression of having the shrewdness that some of the retail merchants in your neighborhood display. How is this possible? Is the fame of these characters fictitious, or what is the gist of the matter? The gist of the matter is this. You have imagined that these people were made of a superior material, and you feel disappointed to discover that they are made of the same stuff as you and those around you. But you wonder, where does the greatness of their achievements lie? Above all, in the following: believing in themselves and in their inherent power, in their ability to concentrate on the task at hand when they are working, and in their ability to avoid energy leaks when they are not working. They believe in themselves and make every effort pay off. The smart people in your town pour their wisdom out on the corners and talk to many fools, while if they were truly wise, they would save that wisdom and place it where it would be useful. The brilliant writer does not waste his wit on the corners. In fact, he closes the closet where he keeps his wit, and only opens it when he is ready to concentrate and get to work. The industrial magnate does not want to impress you with his shrewdness and intelligence. He never did, not even when he was young. While his companions did not stop talking and boasting, this future successful financier did not say a word. The important people of the world, that is, those who have arrived, are not very different from you, or from me, or from the rest of us. Deep down, we are all very similar. You just have to know them to realize how ordinary they are. But don't forget the fact that they know how to use the material they have, while the rest do not know how to and, in fact, even doubt that they have it. The man or woman who arrives normally begins by realizing that he or she is not so different, after all, from the successful people you hear so much about. That gives them confidence, and the result is that they discover that they are capable of getting things done. Then they learn to keep their mouths shut and avoid wasting and dissipating their energy. They store energy and concentrate it on what they are doing, while their companions dissipate their energies in all directions, trying to show people how smart they are. The man or woman who arrives prefers to wait for the applause that follows achievements, and cares very little about the praise that surrounds promises, about what he hopes to do someday, or about carrying out a display of smartness without results. One of the reasons why people who deal with successful people are in turn successful is that they are able to observe the winners and catch the trick of their greatness. They realize that the winner is an ordinary man, but that he totally believes in himself, and also that he does not waste energy, but reserves all his forces for the tasks that await him. And, taking advantage of the example, they begin to put into practice in their own lives the lessons learned. What is the moral of this talk? Simply that you should not underestimate yourself or overestimate others. Understand that you are made of good stuff, and that inside your mind there are many good things. Then get to work and develop them, and extract something good from that good stuff. Achieve it by paying attention to what you have in front of you and giving each of them your best, knowing that in you there are many other good things that will help you in everything that comes before you. Dedicate the best of yourself to the company that occupies you, and do not cheat in the present task for the sake of another that may appear in the distance. Your supply is inexhaustible, and do not waste your good stuff with the crowd of onlookers, spectators, and critics around you watching what you do. Save your good stuff for your task, and do not be in a hurry to receive applause. Save your good thoughts to copy them if you are a writer. Save your good projects to put them into practice if you are in business. Save your wisdom for when the occasion requires it if you are a statesman. And in all cases, avoid the desire to show your cards to the crowd of onlookers who are looking for a free show with which to entertain themselves. There is nothing elevated in this teaching, but it is just what many of you need. Stop fooling around and take things seriously. Stop spoiling the good that is in you and start working on something worthwhile. Chapter 15, Claiming What Belongs to You. In a recent conversation, I was telling a woman to summon the courage to go after something good she had been longing for many years, and that, finally, seemed to be within her reach. I told her that it seemed that her desire was about to be satisfied, that the law of attraction was bringing it to her. But the woman lacked faith and kept repeating, "Oh, it seems too good to be true. Too good for me." She had not overcome the stage of feeling like a worm crawling in the dust, and although the promised land was within her reach, she refused to enter it because it was too good for her. I think I succeeded in prodding her to take a step forward, because the last I know is that she is taking possession of it. But I did not want to talk about that. I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that there is nothing that is too good for you, no matter how great it may be, no matter how unworthy you may seem. You are entitled to all the best, because that is your legitimate heritage. So don't be afraid to ask for, demand, and take. The good things in the world are not food for any favorite child. They belong to everyone, but they only approach those who are wise enough to recognize that they are theirs by right and who have enough courage to go after them. Many splendid things are lost because no one asks for them. They are wasted. They are out of your reach because you feel that you are unworthy of them. They escape you because you lack the confidence and courage to demand them and take possession of them. No one but the brave deserve beauty, says the old adage, and it is true in every sense of human endeavor. If you keep repeating to yourself that you are unworthy of something good that is too good for you, the law could be applied to you and you could end up believing what you say. It is a characteristic of the law. If you believe what you say, it takes you seriously. So be careful what you say because it will believe it. Affirm that you are worthy of the best there is, that there is nothing too good for you, and it is most likely that the law will take you seriously and say, "I think he is right. I am going to give him everything he wants. He knows his rights, so why deny it to him?" But if you insist on saying, "Oh, it's too good for me," and it is likely that the law will say to itself, "I'm not sure that's the case, but he will know. He surely knows, and I'm not going to be the one to contradict him." Why should there be nothing that is too good for you? Have you ever stopped to think about what you are? You are a manifestation of the whole, and you have a perfect right to everything that exists. Or, if you prefer it this way, you are a son of the infinite and an heir to everything. You will be telling the truth in both ways. In any case, and whatever it is that you ask for, you are only demanding what is yours. And the more effort you put into asking for it, the more confidence you have in ending up receiving it, the more you strive to reach it. The closer you will be to obtaining it, an intense desire, a confident expectation, courage in action is what ends up giving you what belongs to you. But before you set these forces in motion, you must awaken to the realization that you are only asking for what belongs to you, and not for anything that you do not have the right to claim. As long as there is the slightest loophole of doubt in your mind regarding your right to the things you desire, you will be creating a resistance to the functioning of the law. You can ask with all the vigor you want, but you will lack the courage to take action if you maintain a shadow of a doubt about your right to get what you want. If you persist in considering what you desire as if it belonged to another instead of to yourself, you will be adopting the position of the envious or greedy, or even that of a thief. In that case, your mind will rebel and will not want to continue with the work, because it will instinctively feel repelled by the idea of taking what does not belong to it, because the mind is honest. But when you understand that the best of the universe belongs to you as a divine heir, and that there is enough for everyone without you having to take it from anyone, then all friction disappears, the barrier falls, and the law carries out its task. I do not believe in humility. That meek and modest attitude does not appeal to me. It does not make any sense. The idea of turning these attitudes into a virtue, when the human being is the heir of the universe and has the right to everything necessary for their growth, happiness, and satisfaction, seems absurd to me. I do not mean that you should adopt a boastful and overbearing attitude. That would be absurd, because true strength does not come from putting oneself on display. The braggart is a self-confessed weak individual. He boasts to hide his weakness. The truly strong person is serene, calm, and carries within him the consciousness of the strength that makes boasting and supposed strength unnecessary. But you have to move away from that hypnotism of humility, that meek and modest mental attitude. Remember the horrible example of Uriah Heep and be very careful not to imitate him. Throw your head back and look the world in the face. There is nothing to fear. The world can also fear you and scream at you. Be a man or a woman, and not an object that moans. And that can be applied to your mental attitude, as well as to your external behavior. Put an end to that crawling and worm-like mental attitude. Stand up straight and look at life without fear. You will gradually become your ideal. There is nothing too good for you, nothing at all. The best of the best is not even good enough for you, because you have much better things ahead of you. The best gift that the world can give you is a mere trifle compared to the great things that await your coming of age in the cosmos. So don't be afraid to go after all that, after the trifles of this plane of consciousness. Go for 'em, grab a good handful, play with them until you get tired. That's what they are made for. They are there for our exclusive use, not for us to look at from afar, but for us to play with them if we so desire. Help yourself. There are tons of those toys waiting for your wishes and demands. Don't be shy. I don't want to hear any more nonsense about things being too good for you. Bah! You are like the emperor's little son, who believes that the tin soldiers and the toy drum were too good for him and who refused to take them. But children are not always like that. They instinctively recognize that there is nothing that is too good for them. They want everything they have in front of them to play with, and they seem to feel that they are entitled to all things. And that is the mental condition that seekers involved in the divine adventure must cultivate. Unless we are like little children, we will not be able to enter the kingdom of heaven. Everything we see around us are the toys of God's nursery, toys that we use in our games. Help yourself, ask for them without shame, as many as you can use. They are all yours, and if you don't see what you want, you just have to ask for it, because there is a great reserve available on shelves and in cabinets. Play, play, and play to your heart's content. Learn to weave mats, to build houses with bricks, to baste, play with all your heart, and play well. And ask for all the materials you require to play. Don't be afraid, because there is enough for everyone. But remember that, although all that is true, the best things are still nothing more than objects to play with. Toys, bricks, mats, buckets, and so on. They are useful, very useful for learning lessons, pleasant, very pleasant to play with, and desirable, very desirable for all those purposes. Have fun and make the most of all those things. Get into the game all the way and enjoy. It is good to do so. But you must remember something. You should never overlook the fact that all those good things are nothing but toys, part of the game, and that you have to be willing to put them aside when the time comes to move on to the next class. To change courses and not cry or complain because you have to leave the toys behind. You must not become attached to them, because although they are for your use and enjoyment, they are not part of you. They are not essential for your happiness in the next stage. Do not despise them for their lack of a sense of reality, because they are relatively wonderful things, and you can enjoy them as much as you want. Do not be a spiritual prude, refusing to participate in the game. But do not become attached to the toys, which are good to use and play with. although not good enough to use you and turn you into a toy. Do not let the toys reverse the roles. There is a difference between being the owner of circumstances and being a slave to them. The slave believes that the toys are real and that he is not good enough to deserve them. He only takes a few because he is afraid to ask for more, and he misses almost all the grace and fun. And then, considering that the toys are real and not realizing that there are many more, he becomes attached to the goodies that have come his way, becoming their slave. He is afraid that they will be taken away from him and does not dare to crawl on the floor and go in search of others. The owner knows that he can ask for everything. He asks for what he needs day by day and does not worry about overloading himself. He knows that there is much more and that they cannot deprive him of it. He plays, and he does it well and has fun playing, and while he plays he learns his nursery lessons. But he does not become too attached to the toys. He is willing to put aside the old toys and reach for a new one. And when they tell him that he has to go to the next classroom, he drops the toys used that day on the floor and, with a sparkle in his eyes and a confident mental attitude, enters the new classroom in the great unknown with a smile on his face. He is not scared because he hears the voice of the master and knows that he is there waiting for him in the great next classroom. Chapter 16. Law, Not Chance. Some time ago, I spoke with a man about the power of thought attraction. He told me he didn't believe that thought could attract anything to him, and that everything was a matter of luck. He told me that he had discovered that bad luck pursued him relentlessly, and that everything he touched went wrong. It had always been like that, it would always be like that, and he had gotten used to it. When he undertook something new, he knew beforehand that it would end badly and that nothing useful would come of it. Oh no! For him, there was no truth in the theory of thought attraction. It was all a matter of luck. This man did not realize that through his own confession, he was precisely offering a most convincing argument in favor of the law of attraction. He was testifying that he always expected everything to go wrong, and that what he feared always ended up happening. It was a magnificent illustration of the law of attraction, but he did not know it, and no argument could ever convince him. He was against it, and there was no way to change him. He always expected bad luck, and every time he ended up being right. Nevertheless, for him, the position of mental science was nonsense. There are many people who seem to believe that the only way the law of attraction operates is when one desires something intensely and continuously. They don't seem to realize that an intense belief is as effective as an intense desire. The successful man believes in himself and in his final success, and, ignoring the small setbacks, adversities, stumbles, and slips, he eagerly rushes toward the goal, never ceasing to be sure that he will get there. His opinions and goals may change as he moves forward, and he may even change his plans or have them changed, but all the time, deep in his heart, he knows that he will end up arriving. He does not continuously desire to be able to arrive. He simply feels and believes it, and therefore he sets in motion the most powerful forces known in the world of thought. The man who also continuously believes that he will fail will undoubtedly end up failing. How could he avoid it? It is no mystery. Everything he does, thinks, and says is tinged with the thought of failure. Others catch that spirit, and for that reason, they do not trust him or his abilities, which makes him think that these are manifestations of his bad luck, instead of attributing them to his beliefs and expectations of failure. He spends all his time suggesting thoughts of failure to himself, and invariably suffers the effects of autosuggestion. Also, in this case, through his negative thoughts, he is blocking that part of his mind from which ideas and plans that would lead him to success should come, to which the one who expects success because he believes in it has access. Brilliant ideas do not come to us in a state of discouragement. Our minds work on ideas that we can use only when we are enthusiastic and hopeful. Human beings instinctively sense the atmosphere of failure that hovers over some of their peers, and on the other hand, they recognize something in others that leads them to say, when they hear that a temporary setback has befallen them, "He will manage to get afloat. He cannot be sunk." It is the atmosphere that the prevailing mental attitude causes. Clean up your mental atmosphere. Chance does not exist. The law sustains everything everywhere because of its own way of operating. It is not possible to name a single thing that has happened by chance. Try to analyze the matter to its ultimate consequences and you will see that it is the result of the law. It is as evident as mathematics, planning, and purpose, cause and effect. From the movements of the worlds to the growth of a mustard seed, everything is the result of the law. The fall of a rock down the side of a mountain does not happen just because, but because there are forces that have been operating for centuries to cause it. And behind those causes there are other causes, and so on, until reaching the uncaused cause. And life is not the result of chance, but of the law. The law operates at full capacity whether you believe it or not. You can be the ignorant object on which the law operates. Or you can align yourself with the operations of the law. Get into its flow, so to speak, and from then on, life will seem like something very different to you. You cannot get out of the law by saying that you have nothing to do with it. You have every right and freedom to oppose it and produce all the friction you want, but that does not affect the law. And you can continue with it until you learn the lesson. The law of thought attraction is one of the names of the law, or rather, one of its manifestations. I repeat that your thoughts are real things. They come out of you in all directions, combining with other thoughts of a similar type, with opposing thoughts of a different nature, forming combinations, heading where they are attracted, moving away from centers of opposing thought, and your mind attracts the thoughts that others have consciously or unconsciously emitted. But it only attracts those thoughts that harmonize with its own. In the world of thought, likes attract and opposites repel. If you tune your mind to the key of courage, confidence, strength, and success, you will attract thoughts of a similar nature, people of a similar nature, and things that fit the mental melody. Your thoughts or predominant mood determine what is attracted to you. They choose your mental companions. Today, you are setting in motion currents of thought that will eventually attract to you other thoughts, people, and conditions in harmony with the predominant key in your thought. Your thought will mix with that of others of a similar nature and mind, and you will be attracted to each other. And with all certainty, sooner or later, you will unite in a common purpose, unless one or the other changes the current of their thoughts. Accept the operations of the law. Integrate it into yourself. Get into its flow. Maintain composure. Tune your mind to the key of courage, confidence, and success. Keep in touch with all thoughts of that type that continuously emanate from hundreds of minds. Take advantage of the best you can find in the world of thought. The best is there, so don't settle for less. Establish a relationship with good minds. Follow the right vibrations. You must be tired of being continually shaken by the operations of the law, so harmonize with it. Thank you for listening to this audiobook until the end. If you enjoyed the content, we invite you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you won't miss our upcoming publications.